Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We're going to continue on with this week's theme, exploring some wild genre combinations, this time going to the French band Pensées Nocturnes. We're going to be checking out the track L'Éphémère, and I think we've had them on the channel before, though maybe not. I recognize the band name though. Let's dive into this. See what kind of wild clown circus stuff they have in store for us today. Okay. The dual descending lines, some being faster than others. Oh, the drumming there. Very interesting place to stop. We've lost all of the horns. This is just a metal band at this point. whiplash on those vocals. Oh, we have some very light bells in here now. What? Yeah, that was so bizarre. I mean, how would I explain to somebody that this track is circus music accompanied by a metal band where the clowns are sad and screaming in French? It's such a weird description. It's But it works. I think that's the thing that really stands out to me. This is a solid track. I do think it is incredibly emotionally heavy, and it pulls me in. I want to listen to more. But I am a little worried about the vocals. I don't know if I should start with them, but I guess we are. The vocal work here is incredible. There's incredibly thin, but not airy. This is thin, but full-bodied, meaning that there's not a lot of airy or ethereal components to it. It still has a full sound to it, but it's so small that it kind of like pierces through everything. There's also the big bravado with the large vibrato to it. That's a nice little rhyme there. Kind of operatic. I love that. It sounds great, especially compared to the higher pitched cleans. And then there's also the higher pitched harshes, which I don't know what I was thinking at the beginning, but in that final section, I was like, wait a second. These are getting very close to depressive black metal vocal styles, just those high-pitched shrieks. I don't think it quite hits some of the highs that we've listened to in bands like Silencer? I don't know, I'm kind of drawing a blank. I had something in my mind and I can't think of it. But it is starting to edge towards that area. Especially at the end of this track, the vocals are incredibly high pitched, kind of shrill, and they're contrasted with the growls in here too. And even if we just had a track that was these four styles in isolation, I'd still enjoy the dexterity and contrast, the dynamics of the vocals. But there's more to it. There's so much more to it. There is a performance put on by these vocalists. It's in the sobbing that is in parts of the vocals. It is the heavy breathing. It's the transition from harshes to cleans, back to harshes, back to cleans, as if there's no real direction for how this song, how these lyrics are being portrayed. It's just human. It's reaction. As if the vocalists themselves are going through it while they're singing these words, and however they happen to sing it is how it gets recorded. Last week, I actually showcased two vocalists that I really love who seem to follow the same sort of technique, where the delivery is just as much a part of the performance as the words and note choices are. This is absolutely a style of vocal work that's going to grab me. I'm just not too sure about those shrill vocals at the end. If that's sort of like a peak and the album sometimes hits that, but not commonly, I could probably do this. But if that's more consistent than it was on this track, it would make a bit of a difficult listen. It would be something I dealt with to enjoy the rest of the album. And the rest of the album is fairly interesting too. As I mentioned, it's circus meets metal. I don't think this is incredibly unusual. In fact, just a couple of weeks ago, we checked out an up-and-coming band, and I guess editor Bryan's gonna have to figure that one out. There's a link up there, and Tardigrade Inferno, is that what it is? We checked out a new single from them, and they also mixed circusy vibes and metal. And I feel like there's a couple of other avant-garde bands who we've checked out who also do this. So it's not completely unusual, but it is something we don't hear as often. The carnival element is a mixture of a couple of things. There's some key points that this song particularly uses. One is the waltz feel. Boom, 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 boom. It's a 3/4 pulse, 3/4 time signature with an emphasis on beat 1. The trombone in here absolutely captures that, especially as that is the lower end sound through a lot of this. There's a couple of places where we shift over to 4/4 and we have an accent on 1 and 3. Boom, 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 led by the trombone. A tuba would also do really well here, but I suppose maybe they wanted something a bit more portable. If this is an instrument they're going to use on tour, trombone definitely would be lighter and smaller. But there's also a lightness to it. The tuba is incredibly warm, whereas the trombone has a little bit more brightness to it. And I think that shines through really well here and kind of transforms it from a sort of a marching sound into a carnival sound. Something from serious to fun or uplifting. I think the brightness of the instrument really brings that out. We hear both of those elements here. There's a few other instruments like the bells at the end of the track that I think really bring forth a fun vibe. Is there another one? I mean, there's the cackling and the laughter throughout here as well. So all of these together are kind of forming this generic pop culture circus sound. The waltz, the sound of the instruments, the laughter, the fun, the bounciness, all of it's kind of coming together, as well as, I think, using common chord progressions and maybe even melodies that would be associated with carnivals or with circuses in here as well, just to further that connection. Beneath all of that, though, is still the guitars, the drums, the bass guitar. They're present, and I think that there's a solid portion in the middle third of this track where we kind of ditch all of the extra non-metal instruments and focus on just making a metal song. And this is certainly the least carnival-esque part of the track. It feels the most metallic, but I'm not really sure what kind of metal. Maybe death metal, but I don't think it's riffy enough for that. It has the mood of black metal, but not the composition. It's certainly not doom, but there is a heavy weight and a dreariness that is captured in this moment. As usual, when I get stuck, chuck it in the avant-garde bin. This is avant-garde metal. I don't know. It's a really interesting mix of all three of the main branches of extreme metal, and I can see arguments for all of them, though I do think death metal is probably the closest that I would want to call it. But what I find most interesting about it is how it brings all of this together. The circus vibes, they are bouncy, they are fun. I mean, right from the start, and kind of got like I was quite surprised by the instrumentation, but once I got past the shock, it's boom, 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 kind of get into that circus vibe. And it reminds me of being in a midway or any sort of, what was that place called? Anyways, the place with games to play, prizes to win, and something like a carnival or a fair. I think that's the word I was going for. Um, but the metal instrumentation, the metal composition, the chords being played, the weight of these instruments brings it down. So we have this clash. Is it a heavy downer song or is it a funner, uplifting song? It kind of sits somewhere in the middle until the vocals come in. And as I mentioned, the vocals have emotion expressed throughout them, not positive, sometimes maybe implied as angry. Might just be my bias when I hear the growls and the screams. Well, the growls primarily. The screams feel painful to me. But you bring that pain in, you bring the sobbing in between words and the cleans. It just takes on this sorrow. And I find this interesting because my first thought, and exactly how I described this to you all when the song was over, was sad clowns singing. The circus vibes immediately made me think that clowns were singing. And I don't know why. Maybe it's also part of the inflection of the clean vocals that put me in that perspective. The harshes certainly don't make me think of clowns. But I think the cleans do, or maybe they're working with the instrumentation and projecting this image onto me, or maybe I'm putting something into this sound based off of my own biases and exposure to, pop culture sounds and visuals in other mediums that have all kind of been smushed together into seeing these connections between these different mediums. But I pictured a circus, kind of dark carnival thing going on, moody black clouds overhead, and clowns, sad clowns on unicycles singing and screaming, while a metal band played behind them, and there was, aerial acrobats and flaming hoops to jump through and stuff like this, like absolutely dark carnival. There's also a sinisterness to this, though, and I think that's what kind of put the dark clouds element to it. The guitar part isn't just heavy, it's also eerie at times. Some of this may also be informed by pop culture. Clowns are a common fear for people, and so clown music or circus music kind of gets tied into that. We can think dozens of clown-styled horror icons over the decades, and pairing clown music with that and just making clown music or circus music kind of creepy in general for a general audience. But I do think it all comes together into something really powerful, because the image of clowns, purveyors of fun and joy and even a little bit of childhood innocence, singing about sad stuff is incredibly evocative. Now, I don't even know what the lyrics are. The way they are singing tells me of pain and sorrow, but the lyrics may paint a different picture. We'll get into that in a moment. The last thing I want to touch on is compositional complexity. It's really interesting how deep this song is. It's very easy to just surface level. Clowns, circuses, metal, this is cool, but it's also kind of scary and very sad. And you can just walk away from the song and yeah, I mean, that already in and of itself is fairly unique. But this is bordering on progressive metal. Maybe not even bordering. There's classical compositional chops in here. Column response, theme and variation. What was another one we had? Hocket. There is Hocket in here. two or more instruments taking turns playing one after another. And if you listen to them all on just one instrument, you would have a full phrase, but that full phrase is chopped up and divvied out to different instruments. So we have that in particular between a lot of the brass. The trombones will trade off on some of this stuff. Sometimes they'll pass it to the electric guitar. There's a lot of cool interplay going on there. We also have counterpoint going on. The end of this track had two guitars doing totally different things, but kind of working well at supporting an overall feeling of, a lacking of synergy, schism, friction, and even the dissonance was leaning into tension or anxiety, while also playing up this idea of harmonic friction, just two things not working well together. So it's just a lot of cool writing between them. The bass does a lot of bassing in this, just, some pedal tone or some small moving ideas, but we do get some cool melodic elements that play around with the two guitars. So it's nice to hear the bass kind of getting to escape the generic bass, metallic metal bass stuff, or just kind of, pedal tone or a secondary thought, something to fill out the low end, but not really contribute to the song much. The bass gets to escape that realm, so I appreciate that. The dual vocals, they're always going back and forth. Lots of cool things going on there. Sometimes harmonizing, sometimes doing texture layering. So when you look at this song and really break down all of the things happening, when you listen to all of the expanded instrumentation, when you listen to the two guitars, the bass, the dual vocalists, and you realize they're all doing things at the same time, and it's not just one idea. They're bouncing all over the place. There's so many ideas being cram-packed, and usually there's only like one or two harmonic ideas, just kind of playing chords. Everyone else is melody, their lead. They might be doing some ornamental ostinato stuff to contribute or play around or dance around with what someone else is dropping down. It's really complex, and there's more in here that I would need a second or third time to pick up, especially as, I'm going to be completely honest here, the shock value of this is really high, and it took me a while to even start to get into an analysis point because, from a more entertaining reaction perspective, I think this works really well. It even got me outside of my must analyze, must understand viewpoint and be like, hey, well, this is interesting. What's going on here? I'm having fun with this. Just kind of getting locked into that surface level reaction to it, because it is, as much as I said, circus and metal is kind of a thing we've heard before, it's also done really interestingly here. And I think a lot of that comes down to the vocal performance, which is quite a bit of a standout from other circusy metal things we've heard in the past. All right, let me hit some lyrics on this, see what's going on there. All right. I don't put a lot of stock in Google Translate for translating French. I've run into a lot of issues with that in the past. And I couldn't find a hand-translated version of this either. So we're going to work with what I have, but I'm going to take a lot of it with a grain of salt. Just kind of look at the broad strokes rather than specific elements. It does not seem to be about sad people, though. The pain that I felt in here, it's not in the lyrics. In fact, the fact that I can't understand the lyrics is probably a benefit for this, because I'm not a big fan of what I've ended up reading, assuming any of it is even accurate. We have a narrator who is talking down to someone else. That's the end of it. There's a stanza in here that brings up the title of the track. It says, "I'm the alpha evil," which I assume is what l'alpha mal translates to. The alpha evil, the main evil, the big bad guy. It says, "I'm the stadium's villain, more violent than Furiani." I don't know what Furiani is or who Furiani is, but he's more violent than him, so that's worth bringing up. It's not the only name in here I didn't understand. The very first line says, "Even Diopsy thinks you're alone," and that really says it all. I don't know what Diopsy is. I looked it up online, got nothing for that name. So maybe that's something contained within the world of this band. Maybe they have a larger universe that their stories take place in where these characters mean something, but to me they don't. But we just have a guy who says that he's the main bad guy. He's so evil, no one can touch him. And he's so violent. And by the end of the track, there is a stanza that says, basically, he's going to bury someone. He says, unless you beg to me as your king, you're going in the ground. Says, I'll be the funeral fireman. I don't quite understand that, but I think it kind of gets this idea across. It's all capitalized as well. But again, I don't know if maybe there is some wordplay in there that didn't get translated well, or something a little bit more poetic to that. It also could be in-universe stuff too. So again, I'm a little bit out of my depth. I hate it when I have to attempt to break down French lyrics machine translated. It's a terrible time for everyone. But the narrator talks about how much he likes pain for other people, and that everyone else is always trying to get up to his level, but they just never can. They can try all they want, but no one's as good as him. They can attempt to be, but they're all pale imitations. That's generally what I get from all of this. And that's not what I got from the music. I mean, I can kind of paint that picture, I suppose. The middle of the track, the pure metal section, I believe does come across a bit more aggressive, but I don't know. The opening and the ending kind of felt sadder, drearier, heavier to me, less antagonistic. I wonder if the song would sound the same to me now, knowing or having an idea, regardless of how accurate that idea might be, of what they might actually be singing about. It is interesting, though, that as performative as I found the lyrical delivery, again, this is just not what I found out of the performance, which is another interesting component to it. These are my thoughts, then, on L'air Formal by Pensées Nocturnes. Let me know what you thought of this. Let me know about my French pronunciation. It's probably terrible, but I do feel like I'm making progress. This is, I think, the most difficult language for me to pronounce, and I'm making progress. At least I think I am. Let me know what you thought of this track, though, if there's anything that stood out to you, anything that you would like to add on to what I said, or correct me on if you have your own take, perspective, or opinion on it. Just toss that stuff down into the comments section, along with anything else you'd like to add to the conversation. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. It takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. That wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow, though, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC, as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.